to have to come home and figure out, after being starved mentally and emotionally and all this time, to come home to try and figure out the next day, how do I pay my rent next month, is actually the scariest part of prison. That is the scariest part for me, being released without any skills.
You're listening to Stories from the Inside Out, a podcast exploring the personal experiences of incarcerated individuals and those reintegrating back into society. We'll take a first-hand look at justice system involvement through conversations and interviews, as well as meet activists and stakeholders committed to changing the institutional status quo one step at a time. My name is Scott Kleik, and this is a Desta Black Community Network production. In the first episode of Stories from the Inside Out, we're introduced to independent artist, entrepreneur, and Burgundy local Kiyha Schrouder, who was imprisoned for a year in Barbados after her vacation plans were abruptly upended. Kiyha speaks honestly and sincerely about her relationship with her sister and extended family, her struggle for mental and spiritual clarity while incarcerated, moving through a problematic and punitive justice system, and the realities of coming home.
My name is Kiyha Schrouder, and I am from Montreal, Quebec. I live in Little Burgundy. I was born and raised in the Little Burgundy area, and I am currently the owner of Big Mama's Marinades and Sauces, and I do music. I have the best family that I think a girl could have. My family is rough and rugged and sweet all at the same time. Some of the kindest people I think you might ever meet. I have 16 siblings. So this sister in particular, she was my mom's first baby after me, and I was 7 getting ready to turn 8, and she was my baby. She was my first test subject. When I learned how to cook, the first I would put some in her mouth and look, it's good. She said, I said, okay, we're gonna throw that out. She was my first everything. I put her on my hip and carried her around. They used to say, you're not grown. I used to walk around with my hip poked out with the baby on my hip. But our age difference, growing up, didn't really allow us to really be friends. And then she had 2 other siblings that were very close in age to her, so she kind of like grew up next to them. And we went through a lot of different stages, I think, coming up, not being able or not really being friends like that, because I can't do nothing with y'all because y'all too young, until they got old enough, they got grown, and then the ages kind of made more sense. And then we would kind of do everything. So our relationship is always like that unit thing. We all for one, one for all. I always tell people we are 16 like one. And then if you put our parents in there, we are whatever, however you want to say, 20 and like 20 as one. Drugs from here in Canada to a foreign country. The country is Barbados. I went on vacation there one time, and I felt like I saw a need, and I decided to try my hand at some things and go back. When I got there, I was then taken into custody, and I served a couple of days shy of 1 year. And I served hard labor. I was sentenced to hard labor. When I got arrested, I was actually not alone. I was with my sister. And I had decided before I even started putting my plan together that if anything happened, that I was going to make sure that I made sure that my sister would go home and that she would be exonerated because she was truly innocent. So I started off with a companion, and then when we went to court, she was not aware that I was not going home with her. I knew that she would take it very, very, very hard if she knew prior to the court case that I would be taking all of the charges and sending her home. And she was quite upset when it actually started to unfold in the courtroom, because she was like, no, I need to stay here with you because this is going to be tough. But for me, I was like, nah, it's going to be a lot harder if you stay here, because my sister would have been the catalyst that they could have used to truly make me act bad, to get on the worst way. And so I figured, you know what, if I'm going to do some of this time, I didn't expect her to be there so long, but I said, if I'm going to do this time, she has to go home. And so I started to put the plan in action. As soon as we got off the plane, I knew. And so, and I knew before, I knew prior to, but as soon as we got off the plane, I was sure that my premonitions, that my dreams, that everything that I had happened prior to was happening to us now. And I just started speaking to her in a tongue that we speak at home. We speak Pig Latin. It's not really a tongue, but it is a tongue. But we speak Pig Latin. So regardless of what language you may speak, it might be difficult to differentiate what we're talking about, especially if I was worried about people listening or something. So I just said to her, I just need to tell you, this is it. We're about to be in trouble. Hold your face. Close your mouth. And she just was like, what? And I said, fix your face. And she was just like, okay. And so being there without her, not that I wanted her to stay there with me, but not having a companion, an ally to do that time with is difficult there. So you're kind of like back against the wall. It taught me a lot of self-restraint. I can tell you that. I was a wild bird prior to going there. I had started hearing God's voice audibly. It was almost like he knew, or God knew, the universe knew my desire to elevate my life. And I had done a lot of different things, I feel like, out of the necessity to be more, to grow. So I had heard him audibly prior to. I knew. But I wanted to be free. And in wanting to be free, I ended up getting in trouble because I didn't listen. I knew. God told me. He said to me, don't do it. Take the drugs out the bag. Put it in the back of your car. Throw a blanket over. He told me where to park the car. He said, park the car here. Just leave it there. Pay the ticket on it for a month. Put the thing in the window. Everything's going to be fine. Go on vacation without it. I said, I can't. I got something I need to do. He said, no. You move when I say move. Listen to me. I let you do a lot of stuff before, right? If you go this time, you're going to be in big trouble. And I didn't listen. And when I got caught, he stopped talking to me. So I also felt like I was abandoned. I went through it. He stopped talking to me. He just stopped talking to me. I stopped hearing his voice. I stopped hearing that audible voice that said, it's okay to move, it's not okay to move. I lost that. I didn't have that anymore. Prison was tumultuous. They put together all of these programs and stuff. They say, come and take a math class or come and take this. But you go there and they're really just degrading you. stand you up in front of people, tell you that you're wrong, having people laugh at you. It's all part of the system. They say, oh yeah, we're here, we're teaching you, we're here to do something good, but there's always a line of them being condescending. It's never really uplifting. It's like, I'm teaching you this basic math. Like, we in here, like, lady, I'm running circles around you in the streets. Are you kidding me right now? You coming to me with basic math talking about, listen, teach us how to find the value in ourselves aside from what we were doing prior to, and allow us to start the ground processes of whatever comes from that. So building, if you want to build a business, what type of business, teach you the skills on how to do those businesses, how to register a business name, how to run a business. These are things that people should know, because these people are not people, regular people. These is people who committed crimes, a lot of them, not all, but of these, a lot of people who committed crimes trying to get something that they felt like they couldn't get otherwise on the streets because they were ill-equipped. I think they need to equip the people with what they need. And these are not people who can work for people, because if they were, they would have been working for people. These are people who are bosses. Put them in a position to be a boss that they are supposed to be. Because we're not here because I didn't go and serve a year because I went there with 2 joints. I went there to level up, to change my life. I'm trying to be a boss on a level, and this is man-made law. I know a lot of people that do a lot of stuff, and God don't stop them. He don't put a halt on them. The prison system uses religion to tell you that the reason why you here is because God saw what you was doing and you was wrong. He think you wrong, so he punished you. But he don't know. God let a lot of people get past. I ain't listen. That's why I was in jail. Not because I did anything wrong. Not because my plan wasn't executed properly. My flight was late. My flight was late. That's my only issue. God said go when he said go, and when he said stop, I used to stop, but I didn't listen. So they need to equip the people so that they can put them in a position that they need to be in. Because after making moves like that, you don't go and sit and be somebody's worker. It's not what you do. Even when the guards are not there, it almost seems like they are looming over your head, because they pin different inmates against each other, and expect information. They trade goods and sneak in goods to give inmates in order to have favoritism, in order to be able to have information on different inmates. When you can get an inmate charged for something that they've been doing, it helps them up their rank. So they implant pretty much like cells in amongst the groups of people that are in prison, and then they go back and extract information from them to pin them against each other. Sometimes it's not even big stuff, it's just personal information, little stuff. And then they use those things to turn them against each other so that they can pretty much go to sleep up on the tarmac, and they know if something happens that somebody that they put there is going to alert them. And they either do it by fear, from making them scared that they're going to be segregated or punished in a certain way, or that they would bribe them and give them things that they probably wouldn't usually have in the prison system in order to get information from them. So you never truly feel safe. You never truly feel guarded, because the people that are there, they're just like you. Actually, they're worse criminals than you, because they're poor criminals. So they're jealous, they're greedy, they're envious. They got all these other things going on that we just don't understand, because we are people that are used to getting money. I can honestly say about 4 officers, one in particular who was super kind. She was super understanding. She understood our plight, what we were going through, and she just refused to be bad to us. She refused. And she knew when, if you were having a hard time, because she would just sit and watch us, and then she would pick and choose who she could do the most for by removing them from the environment and bringing them where she was at. And so I thank God for her, honestly, because if it wasn't for her, I don't know if I would have truly been able to do it for the amount of time that I did. She truly did give me a cushion. And like I said, a handful of officers that I could say were actually good regardless, or tried to be as good as they could regardless. But I've seen officers do unscrupulous things to people. Terrible. Terrible. Well, their job is to be mean, right? That's their job. To show up and be mean. And that's not what it says on their curriculum. Oh, but that's what they're very much told when they're having those office meetings and stuff. They're supposed to be giving us a hard time, because if you show favoritism, then it's a problem, right? So you're not there to be nice to us. You're there to be mean. So the interactions with the officers are very tough, and it becomes personal. It's no longer a job for them. They're jealous. They're in my business. They're upstairs in my suitcases looking in my clothes. They see what type of stuff I got, the type of perfume I wear. These are things for them, and they're very, very jealous. Lots of stuff was missing out of my bag. I had a lot of girls who actually filed reports against officers for taking stuff out of their bags and giving it to other inmates. And they actually got in trouble for those things. For me, just because I am the person that I am, they don't like me. So I had a very, 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 very hard time with them. Segregation is like the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm already here in prison going through this, and now you take me and separate me from everyone that's here, put me alone by myself, and when I am calling for help or I need someone, you don't come. That right there, that feeling of hopelessness is something that one day is super tough. Imagine 13 days, 30 days of that. Unless you can embrace that solitude, it's no good. I thank God that I had some type of spiritual background, because segregation will make you go into places in yourself that are very dark and a lot of the time skewed. Not being able to tell reality from what this is that's going on, this type of psychosis, maybe I would call it, that's going on in your head at the time. Segregation is tough unless you truly embrace solitude. And once you do that, I think that's how some people actually come out of segregation unscathed. But when it's, and I can't even say unscathed, but not bothered in a way that someone who can't. But I could tell you that coming out of segregation makes you feel like you have absolutely no control at all, because I'm already in prison to be punished. This is the punishment: being away from my family and friends, eating this food, waking up being woken up at 4:30 in the morning to bathe in freezing cold water at 5 o'clock in the morning, to have to wait 3 hours or 4 hours until 8 and 9 o'clock until breakfast is ready, when you're only a population on the women's side of the prison of 28, but breakfast takes 3 hours to come or 4 hours to come after you've taken a freezing cold shower in the morning. There's nothing to chew on, to get your body moving, to make you feel like you need to do something. So you're literally just sitting in an air conditioned kind of like ventilated environment, and you're literally ill. I had so many mixed emotions. I was so happy to go home, but it was surreal to me. I was afraid to go home. I was happy that I was going to get to see my family, but I was afraid. Not afraid that I was going to be judged, not afraid that I was going to be embarrassed. I was afraid that I was no longer myself. And then I realized that even though I wrote down every step that I could remember that I needed to do when I got home, I knew that I was missing a lot of the pieces of myself that was going to be able to put that in action and actually do it. I was afraid that I lost my, what I used to call like my fairy dust. I used to be invisible. I felt like I had a satchel full of fairy dust, and that when people told me no, I would sprinkle some in their eyes and then they would say yes. And I would feel like I wanted to do this certain something, and I would say, I really want to do this. And they would say, that's a very unattainable goal. And I would sprinkle some fairy dust on whatever it is that I wanted to do, and then it would just come to fruition and I could do it. But they stole my fairy dust while I was in prison. They stole it from me. I'm sure someone is using it right now, but they did. And spiritually, they attacked me. They broke me down. They took every single part of me. So I wasn't going home whole. I was going home in pieces. And that wasn't fair to me. I did my time. I even paid a my family and friends paid a very, very large fine for me to come home, but I was still coming home missing something. And that part I didn't find fair. So I was afraid to go home. I didn't know how I was going to take care of myself. I didn't know how I was going to survive. And after that, I actually came home and ended up doing all kinds of terrible things to take care of myself because I was not ready. I wasn't prepared. And my family did so much, but I felt like I was being ungrateful. So I was scared to go home because I didn't know. I didn't know who I was going to owe, who I needed to pay back. It was something that I went through. I also was very afraid to go home because I had dreams several times that I was home, but I wasn't really home, and I would wake up in prison. So I was scared to go home because I wasn't sure if the process that I was taking at that point was real. So there's a young lady that I met there, actually. She used to kind of be like my eyes and ears because I couldn't tell sometimes what was real and what wasn't. After a couple little times in segregation, I really felt like detached from myself, from my spirit. And that's what it does, I guess. But she could tell you that leading up to, I was going crazy in my mind. When I knew that they had the money for me to go home, I actually said to them, they were like, okay, we can buy a ticket for you today. And I said, no, it's okay. Give me 3 days. And they were like, you want to stay for another 3 days? I'm like, I need to stay for another 3 days to just to prepare myself. But just buy the ticket for 3 days from now so that I know it's bought and then I have no other choice but give me 3 days. And they literally had to give me 3 days. I stayed not because I had to for those. I needed to get my mind right. I needed to prepare myself because I had this young lady and I'm like, okay, we're awake right now. And she's like, we're awake right now. I'm like, okay, where's my stuff? She's like, your stuff is there. I'm like, where's my hair stuff? Where is it? She's like, it's right there. Look. I'm like, when did they buy the ticket for? Tell me the date. And then she would tell me the date. And I was like, okay. And then for a second, I felt like, okay, yeah, this is real. And then I would go for a second into my cell and go and lay down. And I would get up again and I would call her name and I would be like, come. Okay, listen, I'm sorry to bother you. When am I going? Tell me when I'm going home. She said, sister, I'm telling you, you going home. In 2 days, you're really going home. She said, but I got to tell you, you keep coming back and asking me this, and it's making it harder and harder for me every day. She's like, please, you got to know that you're going home and it's time for you to go, okay? And I was like, okay. But I had so many dreams that I would wake up and I was home and my mother was rubbing my hair and she held my hands and she cooked food and I could taste it. I could really taste it. I felt it. I felt my mom's couch. I felt it. But I said to her in a dream one night, I said, Mommy, am I really here? She said, of course you're here, Kiyha. I said, I started looking at everybody's faces around me in the dream. I said, this don't feel right. How I get here? And she said, Kiyha, you came on the plane. I said, how come I don't remember coming on the plane? And she just looked at me and her eyes were blank. And I said, Mommy, am I really home? She said, Kiyha, you're home. I said, okay, maybe I'm tired. She said, yeah, you're tired. Sit down on the couch. Relax. And I sat down. I said, Mommy, you come sit with me? She said, I was just coming. She sat down next to me. She put her hands in my hair and she started to rub my hair. And I said, Mommy, I'm so happy that I'm here. And I grabbed her hand. When I grabbed her hand, it felt so real. I was shocked. And I went, and when I opened my eyes, I was in prison. That kind of set the tone for me. And I had these different types of dreams so many times that when it was time to go, I was afraid. And when I got home, I was afraid to sleep. And so I went through a terrible psychosis when I came home, because for maybe I'd have to say for the first 80 hours, I didn't sleep. I sat up and I watched the sun come up and come down and go up and go down because I didn't believe I was home. It was all like a dream. I said, I'm going to start just taking a walk in the daytime, and I'm going to, stretch myself out and feel a little bit better. I'm going to get used to being outside around people and stuff, because I would put on my clothes and go outside and get downstairs in front of my building and start sweating and sweat my clothes soaking wet till I could wring my t-shirt out. And I have to go back upstairs. I have to tell my friends, I'm sorry, I can't go. So I'm like, I'm going to get used to just being outside again. And I cut the block. And right before I got to my house, I don't know what happened, but I just was walking and I slowed down for a second, I think, to take a breath. And when I inhaled and I looked up and I exhaled, something in my mind said, you should smoke crack. And I said, what? I said, devil, you're a liar. You're a liar. You're not welcome here in my life. You could tell me something like that? You're not welcome here in my life? And I was standing in front of my building and I said, God, where are you? I've been asking for you all this time. Where are you? I need you now. Now. That day, I went into my house. I don't think I went back outside at that point for about a week. I called my friend and I said, listen, I don't want to call you and ask you to hold this bag with me, but I need you to talk to me right now, and I need to tell you some things, because if I don't, I feel like I'm going to do something bad, and I need you to talk to me now. And just her talking to me alone brought me back to a very safe space, and it allowed me to hash out the rational thoughts and the thoughts that were not rational, the irrational thoughts. And it just was like, okay, you're going to have to start compartmentalizing some of this pain, some of this hurt, some of this anguish. You're going to have to deal with this differently now. So it's time to talk. You got to start talking. And in that, I was able to start to find myself again. But I could have been equipped with someone to talk to when I came home. I never spoke to anyone, and I probably should have talked to somebody when I first came home, because like I said, I went through a very, very tumultuous time. And in that, I can remember when I said, okay, I need to start talking to somebody about this, because one, I've never been a person who's like anti-drugs or anything like that. I'm not that type of person, but I'm not a drug addict. And so in my mind, to have a thought like I had, actually, it turned on a different part of me and a part of psychosis that in my mind that I was like, no, 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 no. I need to start talking because something happened to me. I went to therapy every Thursday in prison. I had to. Absolutely. They have somebody that comes and talks to you. Actually, I have to say, he's also part of the reason, one of the reasons why I was kind of able to not go as far as I saw myself going on some days. And he had put himself in a position where I could actually request him, because some people would have to wait until, okay, so Mondays, this therapist comes in. And on Thursdays, this therapist comes in. And he's here for this amount of time and he sees you for this amount of time, each one of you. But I would be like, listen, hey, I'm going to tell y'all what's about to happen. Fire and brimstone in here. And I meant that, because after a certain amount of time of just not being heard, that's the only way to get heard there. Now you got to act up. Now you got to shut down because they want to see that part of you. Well, now I'm about to show you that part of me. So I would say, hey, today's the day. They say, you want to see Mr. Such and Such? I say, absolutely. And they would go and get him. And thank God for him, because I swear he would allow me. I would curse. He would let me curse. And I would tell him everything. And I would say, come close. And they say, you can't get that close to me. He said, leave her, because you don't know. I would tell him, listen, let me say I could say some stuff. And I would whisper and I would say what I wanted to say. And at first, he would just be like, he would be very stern. But one day I start talking and he just bust out laughing. He said, you know what? He said, I'm happy that I could be there for you like this. He said, but you don't know how good this is for me too. He said, you are so funny. He said, you know what? They don't even know what they're missing right now. Giving you a hard time like this is allowing them not to even be able to see who you really are, Kiyha. And I'm sad. I'm sad that you don't have that outlet here. I honestly thank God for him. I think about him sometimes. I've searched him a couple of times on Facebook. I was very, very grateful for him, actually. My closest friend in life, who was a sounding board for me. One of the reasons why I'm here doing this interview right now, and her allowing me to vent, to say what I need to say, because I felt like I was not being heard, or maybe that they didn't understand what I was saying. But that really was my outlet, along with what I know how to do on my own. Having someone assess where my mind was really at and prepare me in the places, in the parts that I was lacking in. Something to break me away from the mindset of having to be resourceful in order to live. But to have to come home and figure out, after being starved mentally and emotionally and all this time, to come home to try and figure out the next day, how do I pay my rent next month, is actually the scariest part of prison. That is the scariest part for me, being released without any skills. Some days I'm consumed with anger. I want to fight the system. And some days I'm passive aggressive, and I want to say, you know what? Bump it. I ain't got time for that. I need to move forward and just go and do something else. I'm conflicted in my mind, like even about this podcast. Sometimes I was thinking to myself, I'm like, am I ready to really do this podcast? Because if I do this and I talk about this means that I can't never do crime again. I can't never do nothing else, because the people is going to be looking at me. So this is a thing for me. How do I eat past this? How do I live past this? Because after you tell a story like this, they're looking. So now what? And this is a thing that I go through in my mind back and forth when it comes to moving forward. So I don't even know.
How's your relationship with your sister now?
I have to honestly say, we are a lot closer now, I think, than we have ever been in life. We had our time when I first came home because of PTSD. survivor's remorse. She harbored a lot. She was hurt that I took all the charges and sent her home. So the survivor's remorse came in from not being able to be there with me to help protect me from some of the things, or at least go through with me some of the things that I went through. How could you not love someone who trusts you to the end of the earth, even when you're wrong? How? You know, if she don't ever speak to me another day in her life, she's always going to be that to me. So I'm just learning to forgive myself now. And that being able to forgive myself, even just to the extent that it is now, has allowed me to kind of heal a little bit. But I beat myself up for a long time about this situation, but I had to reckon with some things in my mind, because the truth is that I know where my heart was at, and had everything gone right, my sister would be a very, very wealthy woman right now. So I'm learning to forgive myself in the situation, because I know that in the path that I'm taking now, when that money come through, I'm gonna make sure that she's okay. And I have to prepare my mind that way so that I can actually get in the groove into, being myself again, and actually earning again, and not being afraid of the world. So I forgave myself, or I'm starting to forgive myself, and it's been part of my peace.
Thanks for listening to the show. We appreciate your time and attention. Please subscribe to Stories from the Inside Out and leave us a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow Desta BYN on Instagram to stay up to date about the show, or visit destabyn.org to learn more about our reentry program, the Black Legal Action Fund, and other community programs. Until next time, take care.